so much for being here. Obviously, it totally means the world to me that you are here learning with me. And this parsha is super deep, super, super deep. So first, let's just turn to the Lord and ask for assistance. Hi Hashem, hi Hashem, hi Hashem, hi Hashem, hi Hashem. Hashem, wow, thank you so much, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for the opportunity to learn Torah. Thank you, Hashem, for the opportunity to not just learn Torah, but take that Torah, apply it to our lives, and experience greater happiness and content and personal manifested higher living, because we have this book, right? And it's like, oh, cute, we learn Torah, but it's like, no, we got this book that tells us how to live better lives so that we could have more happiness and more wisdom. And that's so nice, Hashem. So thank you so much. And thank you to JIC who puts this year on. And thank you to you for showing up. Because we're studying Parshat Mishpatim, which is all the laws, I have here the Etz Chaim. And because later in the Parsha, we're going to learn about how when Moshe was up on Har Sinai, the throne of God as if descended onto the mountain, and God had as if this ottoman, right? And it says that it was like sapphire, it was like sapphire, it was like the stone that is this kind of gorgeous blue, right? We know about the luchot and about Moshe's staff and the throne of God. They're all made of that sapphire. So now you understand today's background. So anyways, thank you, Hashem, for the background. Thank you, Hashem, for kombucha. Oh, the Lord is kind. Raw multi-green kombucha. Woof, we got it good. Torah and kombucha. So yeah, thank you, Hashem. Thank you, you guys. And let's do some dedications. Okay, so please take a moment and invite into your heart the dedications that you want to, bring into the world. Where do you want the zchut, the merit of your learning Torah to go to? So I'm going to give some shout-outs, some mazel tovs. Shout-outs to Lexi Grace, Kenneth Lowenstein, Natalie T, Rachami Bitzan, Simcha Sher, Karen Zwick, Jody Goldberg, Deborah Kogi, Orachaya, Cheryl Marquardt, Lori Polanski McCrossin, Lynn Siegel, Sherry Kadovitz, also Jesse Pooh, Buttons, Bubbles, Lily Jr., and Happy. And also happy birthday to Tahila Lazar, and mazel tov to Revaya, and mazel tov to Shlomo First and Batya on their engagement, and a special shout out to all those in Bidud in quarantine. Mazel tov to Meitav Shalem, my niece, on her bat mitzvah party that they're actually having at the moment as we speak, with you in spirit. We also want to dedicate this year to the refuah shlema of kol cholei corona, everybody with corona, also specifically my sweet friend Simcha Bat Rachel watching from the hospital room. May the Lord bless you and keep you and shine his countenance upon you and give you the most beautiful healing you've ever known. Rabbi Anava, Tamara Bat Etel, and Yiska Malka Bat Root, and everybody else who needs their refuah shlema. And finally, I also want to continue to dedicate this class to the finding of my cousin Dane, and also now we add to that list our friend Sarah Carey Rothberg. Please, Hashem, let her find her way home. Let us all find our way home. And that's actually a really great opening, because Hashem does not just give us these 53 laws in this Parsha of Mishpatim because he wants so many Jews to be lawyers and go to law school. Hashem gives us this massive chunk of laws in this week's Parsha because he wants us to find our way home, to ourselves, to him, her, it, whatever. So let's go there. In past years, in this week's Parsha, what I've done, and this is why I have all these note cards on all the 53 laws, is I've really gone into every single law and tried to explain it, which is funny because 53 laws in 60 minutes, it's often a challenge. But if you want, I can post prior shiurs, because today we're actually going to take a different angle and a different direction. We're going to look into what's up, what can we learn from God for being such a rule setter, putting so many laws out there, is God OCD? No, he's not. A funny joke I heard on that. It's it should be spelled CDO, because that's the letters in proper order if you're OCD. Okay. It's a good, Adar's coming. We got to try to laugh a little bit. So what's the deal? So first of all, just in terms of the fact that there are so many laws and God is asking us to refine ourselves, I just want to open this year with a very beautiful Torah I heard at the Happy Minyan from Rav David Sachs this week. And he said like this. He said, if you're standing here, okay, and you start walking in this direction, okay, so now I'm walking towards you, I'm walking towards you, I'm walking towards you. And then what will happen is if I keep walking in that direction, then in a year I'm going to end up there, right? You could imagine the trajectory? Cool. But now what happens if I'm standing here and at the beginning of that journey, I turn a fraction of a millimeter to the right? Okay? So now I'm walking and I'm walking and I'm walking and I'm walking, and a year later, I'm actually ending up over here, which is a completely different direction than if I started walking just here to here, right? So I've made the tiniest change in my life. But if I keep following that path and that direction, I am paving a completely different path for myself. And that image was really, really touching to me, because I've been really trying to make sure that I'm heading myself in the direction of life that I want to go in, that I'm making the decisions now that are going to put me in the way of all those goals that I have. And so I thought this imagery was so beautiful, and even just enough for the whole shiur. Just this thought of whatever you're doing in your life and whatever refinements you want to make, right? Because what are all these laws? They're ways how we could refine our lives in these tiny little ways or in these big ways so that we end up in the direction we want to go. So just this one image of, if I'm starting in this kivun and heading here, I'm going to go there. But this just one little change I make in my life, a fraction of a degree, I'm going to end up somewhere totally different. And so I really appreciated this as a beautiful metaphor of understanding how to take personal responsibility in my life and what decisions I'm making that are going to later make big changes in my life. So I hope you enjoyed that. I thought that was so, so, so cool. So what we're going to do is a super, super quick review of what almost all of the laws are. And we're going to start asking some questions. So the context, by the way, because last week we just got the Torah. And the question I always ask people is, so how long were we there? How long were we at Har Sinai in the first place, right? So a lot of people say, oh, well, I think a couple days, right? And then most people say, oh, wait, no. Moshe was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. So we must have been there for 40 days. And then people are like, wait, no. I think he had to go up twice because he came down and he broke the tablets, and then he had to go back and get the other tablets. So it must be 80 days. And the people are like, wait, but wasn't there a third time Moshe went up? The first time was the third time, really. So that was 40 days, 40 days, 40 days. So we know Moshe is on Har Sinai for a total of 120 days, and that corresponds to the 120 years of his life. We also learn from this, a lot of people in Judaism do 40 days of something, right? They'll read Nishmat Kol Chai for 40 days. They'll go to the Kotel for 40 days. And a lot of people, we do so many things without knowing why, right? We're missing the basics. And one of the reasons we do 40 days is this harks back to Har Sinai, where if Moshe could get the entire Torah in 40 days, what cannot we accomplish in 40 days as well? So those are just some fun facts. So we weren't at Har Sinai for a couple days. We weren't there for 40. We weren't there. So maybe we were there for 120. But actually, here's the answer. Actually, we were there for more than a year, say most of the commentaries. More than a year at Har Sinai? I love camping out, but for a year? Okay, that actually sounds epic, but a year? What were we doing? Well, we were learning all of the laws. Parshat Mishpatim, we were just learning all of these laws. It was basically the first yeshiva. So if you went to SEM or you went to yeshiva, the OG yeshiva was Har Sinai itself. We stayed there learning all these laws, and it took a really, really long time. So first of all, that might have been kind of chill, kind of dreamy, right? This green river flowing, peace amongst people. Wow, sounds awesome. Can't wait. But what were some of the laws we learned? So we're just going to go through them. So the laws, there were 53, okay? First one we learn about Eved Ivri. What to do when you have a slave, and a Jewish slave and a non-Jewish slave. Then it talks about a sale of a daughter. Oh my goodness, you're going to sell your daughter? Well, if you need to, the laws are there. Murder, intentional and unintentional, the laws of murder. Here's 3 ways that you're gonna die. Shout out to Seema, you're gonna die, said her son to me one time in the hospital. We should all live and be well. So don't hit your mom or your dad. If you hit your mom or your dad and you draw blood, you gotta die. Don't kidnap, okay? Still a problem in our world today. Don't curse your mom and your dad in the name of God with 2 witnesses. Don't do it. Bar fights, there's bar fights in the Torah? Well, yeah, because this idea of if you strike someone with a stone or a fist. Then what happens if you kill a slave or you hurt a slave, a Jewish slave, a non-Jewish slave? Pregos, pregnant ladies, eyes and teeth, right? If you collide with a pregnant woman, if she miscarries, if you bust an eye, if you bust a tooth. Tooth for a tooth. Crazy cows. In other words, this is like the one thing I learned in Gemara in high school, a goring cow, and what to do with your cow when your cows cause harm, and how that applies to us. Holes in the ground, that's the pits, right? Don't leave holes in the ground. Don't set someone else up to fall, okay? Stealing animals again. Oh man, you gotta stop stealing the animals. Don't go stealing cattle. Please stick to the sheep and the horses I gave you. I didn't plan that. Don't steal, right? Then it's like, oh, you messing with my fields and grapevines? Yeah, I heard it through the grapevine. That one I did plan, you see. Don't mess with your people's fields. Who else is a thief? Brace yourself. According to the Midrash, one who insists that another dines with him, while in his heart does not wish to have him as a guest, is considered a thief. One who offers presents to another, knowing in advance they won't accept, a thief. A vendor with dishonest weights, like if you're not using exchange rates correctly. A vendor who mixes high quality with poor quality. Gnevat da'at, flattery. If you flatter somebody to gain favor in their eyes, or just because you don't know what else to say, that's thievery. Embarrassing people. Oy, ashamnu bagadnu. Thievery of their dignity. Cutting in line, stealing time, thievery. Shomer mastaf. So there's laws about what to do when someone asks you to guard their stuff. Friends of ours, if you're watching, had this crazy situation where, and we talked about this last year, where she was borrowing someone's violin, and it was the violin of her grandmother, and then her house got robbed, and it was this whole situation of like, oh my God, what do we do? I was guarding your thing, but like, I got it taken out of my possession. Like what do we do in these situations? Borrowing an outfit for the club. How do we borrow things properly? Seducing virgins. Don't do it. Don't do it. Killing witches and sorcerers. Killing animal doers. Killing people who offer to other gods. Interesting. Some of that's surfacing today. By the way, such a cool question from my student Tira Ades. She said, wait a second, if we're supposed to kill animal doers, what do we do with the Midrash about Adam in the Garden of Eden? Love these questions. No oppressing. Don't oppress a stranger. Don't, because I say no, no, no. Don't oppress strangers. Don't oppress widows, not orphans. No, don't do it. This was really hard because last year I had a landlord that was both a widow and an orphan, and we really clashed. And so I had to call the rabbi all the time because I'm like, but she's a widow and an orphan. What do I do? You know, it was actually really a challenge for me. Free loans. We give free loans. We're so cool. Because why? Because Hashem is compassionate. Don't curse. And now this one is a challenge. Don't curse God or a leader amongst your people. So for any of us dealing with the situations in the world today, we might want to review our halacha, myself included, because, oh man, like we're like flinging curses, right? Like, oh no, Hashem. Here's, don't delay bikurim, pidyon haben, pidyon of your animals. And essentially, God is telling us in the midst of this, and we'll revisit this later, because anshe kodesh tihiyun. You need to be holy, right? We'll discuss what that means. Don't eat the flesh, don't eat torn flesh, send it to the dogs. Don't accept a false report. Don't let a wicked person testify, a wicked witness. Do not, and here's a big one that a lot of us are going to be triggered by. I certainly was when I saw this. I went, oh my goodness. Don't follow a majority for evil. So I bet a lot of us feel like we're fighting against some majority beliefs. Woo, spicy. And don't glorify a destitute person. if like fairness and justice come first. My fave, and we'll talk about this one more later, please God, if we have time, is my fave. If you encounter an ox or a donkey of the enemy wandering, you shall return it to him repeatedly. If you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? You shall surely, repeatedly help him. Amazing. And we're going to talk about this one later too. Don't pervert judgment, even if someone sucks. Do not execute the innocent or the righteous. Do not accept a bribe. Do never accept bribes, but also don't accept bribes. Do not oppress a stranger, because you know the feeling, man. True that. Distance yourself from a false word. Whew. That's take a lot from that one. Also talks about Shabbos for the weeks, Shabbos for the lands. And then Hashem says, guard everything I told you and don't mention the name of other gods. And by the way, just because we want to make sure to throw a few more laws in there, we have holidays. Woohoo! Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaKasdir, Chag HaAsif. To Jerusalem we go. Not being in Jerusalem right now. Rabbi Nachman says, everywhere we go, we're going to Jerusalem. So may that be true. Oh, by the way, don't cook a cow in its mom's milk. Not cool. All right. So that's the basics of those are the basics of the laws. Hashem also tells us in this parsha, he's sending angels to protect us. And then at that point we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear, which connects us back to Purim. Moshe writes it all on these gigantic 12 stone pillars, which is like the original Stonehenge. And it's actually, this is in the Pshat. You could look it up. It's super, super cool. There's a blood sprinkling party in the Parsha, but I didn't make that up. You look in the simple basics. And then Moses and Aaron and Nadav and Avihu and the 70 elders go up. The 70 elders have to stop at a certain point. And like we said in the beginning, we saw God. We saw the likeness of sapphire brickwork under his feet. And it was like the essence of heaven in purity. And then God says to Moshe something so cool, and there's such a profound lesson in it. He says, Aleh alai hahara veheyesham. Go up to the mountain and be there. Presence. God is teaching us not just laws, but presence. Heyesham. It means be there. God says, I'm going to give you the luchot. Moshe goes up. He says, wait for me. Wait up. And that is the parsha in basics. So, now what? I had a very, very deep understanding of what the parsha means to me this year, and that's what I want to impart to you. And that is not any of the laws in specific, but rather, what's up with all the laws, God? What's up with that, yo? And I realized it stood out so bolet to me. You know, in last week's parsha, in Yitro, the pasuk is, V'hagbel et hahar v'kidashto. In Yitro, Yud Tet Kaf Gimel, God says, put a boundary around the mountain, v'kidashto, and sanctify it. So we're learning that even at Har Sinai itself, there was a major boundary that you couldn't cross. And in fact, if you did cross the boundary and go to the other side of the mountain, you would just drop dead. It was like literally a death sentence. And you have all these laws, and laws are sort of another way of saying boundaries. And so I'm thinking that maybe, and this is kind of the punchline of the Shiur, that maybe what God is teaching us by giving us all these laws and the idea that we're meant to imitate, to emulate God, is God sets boundaries. I'm supposed to imitate God. Maybe I have to set boundaries as well. And this to me was like, because I have this really awesome friend. He should live and be well. And he says that people will always treat you the way you tell them, the way you teach them to treat you. By our behavior, by the boundaries that we set up in our lives, we are actually, or the boundaries we do not set up in our lives, we're actually teaching people how they can and can't treat us. And this has been coming up for me personally a lot. And I want to invite you into the topic of rules, of boundaries, of borders, because this is what Hashem does. He wants to give us his essence, right? Ana, nafshit, ketavit, yahavit, says Rav Shalom Bott in the book that Linda Miriam edited, Exodus, right? He says, Anochi, the first word of the Ten Commandments, the introduction to the whole Torah is, I'm giving you my soul. I'm giving you my soul in writing. Ana, nafshit, ketavit, yahavit, I'm giving you my soul, ketavit, in writing. But if I'm going to give to you myself, if I want to be in this relationship with you, I've got some serious boundaries. There are boundaries on the mountain itself, and there's going to be 53 boundaries that I set up, because what Hashem says to us is, I'm going to teach you how to treat me. I'm going to teach you how I want you to treat my world. And I'm going to tell you that when you don't respect my boundaries, says God, you're not respecting me. Now do you understand why we started with respect just a little bit, respect just a little bit? And I think actually the profound lesson of Mishpatim, there's lots. Like you can do like I did last year and the years before and go into every boundary and every border and every rule and every law. Or we could just take a step back and say, hold on one second. Am I setting up boundaries myself? Am I teaching the people in my life how I am willing to be treated? So I'm going to give you some really fun examples, and I invite you to also give examples in the comments and just in general, and to start having an awareness. I only gained this awareness this year. L'chaim, I already made a bracha. Kombucha is like this delicious drink that kind of tastes like toe jam. All right, so here's two fun examples, all right? In the past, in my life, I love peace, I love kindness, I want everyone to be bubbly and sweet, and I am from LA, so I don't like to make conflict. Is anyone else who's watching, can I please ask you, do you also avoid conflict? Do you also avoid confrontation sometimes? I hear that a lot of other people do, and most of my life, I've been willing just to laugh it off, or not say something or not bring it up because I don't want to bother anyone. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to get anyone upset. I'd rather just everyone have peace, and I'll just kind of keep quiet or whatever. But recently I've opened an awareness to boundaries and teaching people how I want them to treat me through my boundaries. So here's an example. So I'm walking down the street, and this guy, and granted he's kind of a kook, whoa, that sounds mean, but he was a kook based on his behavior, right? So I'm walking down the street and he goes, "Are you married?" Now, in past years, I may have just, because someone approaches you so aggressively, I may have just said, haha, yes, or haha, no, or just not even taken it as a problem. Okay, so here's a weirdo, he does what he did. And this year, because I've opened my awareness about this, I looked at him and I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "I just asked if you're married. I want to get married." And I said, "Please don't talk to me that way." And I was like, yeah, go me, woohoo, right? Or here's another one, okay? So yesterday, I received a message from someone in a WhatsApp group that said, "Dear friend, while we really appreciate the content of what you're posting, please don't post after 11 p.m. because you're awakening sleepers." So my immediate response was, "Sure, no problem. Sorry, I didn't realize I'm in LA. I didn't think about the time. And also, I'm in the younger generation, so actually most of us turn off our phones or put it on silent when we sleep, so I didn't have a frame of reference." Immediately, I had no borders, I had no boundaries. I cowtailed and said, "Oh God, I'm so sorry, sure, I'll do whatever you want. Oh my God, I hurt you, oh no." And then I thought about it and I was like, hold up. Who are you? I don't even know who you are texting me. And then I was genuinely asking, is this your WhatsApp group? And I was like, wait a second, no. I know who started this WhatsApp group. It was a friend of mine, not them. So I was like, wait a second. I don't know who you are. You didn't introduce yourself. You didn't start this group. And you're actually telling me I'm awakening sleepers. And I was like, wait a second. I'm not awakening sleepers. And you don't run this group. And these aren't if you don't run this group and there are no rules in the group and I'm not breaking any rules and I'm not disrespecting you, hold on. I am not awakening sleepers. And I actually invite you to put your phone on silent in order to take personal responsibility and to control the bings that happen in your bedroom at your house when you sleep. This is actually your responsibility, not mine. And I said it very respectfully, but I was like, wow, I was so happy with myself Because usually where I would have no boundaries, I think I just got accused of awakening sleepers, and actually, I'm not awakening sleepers. You gotta turn your phone off if you don't like it, like, and actually, no, I'm not gonna monitor when I post unless you tell me that you are the leader of this group and these are the rules that you set out and I'm breaking your rules, and in which case I'm so sorry. But I was like, wow, I'm so proud. Also sometimes in the Holy Land, you'll get, well, not anymore, you won't get in a taxi, but like back in the day, you get in a taxi and people ask you the most personal questions, like when are you gonna get pregnant, or why don't you have a boyfriend, or this or that, and it's like, it's actually amazing that all of these circumstances in life, I believe, are not about other people being rude or disrespectful, but opportunities for us to take a look and say, wait a second, who is this person? Did they respect me in the first place with their approach? Do I even want to answer the question that they asked me? We have this tendency, I believe, someone asks you a question, you owe them an answer. Someone confronts you, you owe them what they're going to demand from you. But actually, we don't owe anyone anything except for respect. And the way that respect begins is with self-respect. And God, the one we're supposed to emulate, says, I have a lot of boundaries. I have a lot of respect for the world that I'm going to create. I have a lot of respect for my needs, says God, or if God has, needs, there's debates on that. But to you, my sweetheart, but to you, my precious daughter, but to you, my precious son, are you actually, I have this mantra, if I'm uncomfy, I'm going to ask you to change and not me. And like, maybe this sounds like harsh, but it's all coming from a place of like really coming from the other side. So if you already have a lot of gvura and you already have a lot of boundaries, then maybe this isn't the number one shiur for you. But if you, like me, try to be a peacekeeper and non-confrontational and are not into conflict and just kind of want everyone to be happy and it's not worth it, or I'll kind of be a doormat or like whatever. So it's like, wait a second. This is a phenomenal week to explore what your boundaries and borders are. Are people talking to you in a certain way that you're uncomfortable with? And can you politely say, hey, you know what? I'm not so comfortable with that. You see, another awesome friend of mine taught me this thing, and we've brought it up before in the shiur. They said there's a difference between self-confidence and self-worth and self-value. Because what I'm suggesting here is that God is saying, I respect the world I want to create so much. These are the values that I stand for, and so this is what I'm asking of you, dear Jewish people. So we're supposed to do the same, right? We're supposed to say, I'm really important. I'm really important. It's really important to me that I honor my needs and the world that I want to create around me. And so I'm going to actually put borders and boundaries. So my friend said, self-confidence is what we say yes to, but self-worth and self-value are what we say no to. I know I'm worthy of a certain standard of respect and honor when I'm willing to say to somebody, actually, please don't talk to me like that. Now, again, always kindly. Like, you never win the battle for respect if you disrespect, right? If I yell at somebody because I didn't like the way they treated me, then who am I fooling? I fell into the trap. But if we can kindly and politely set boundaries for ourselves and just say what we are comfortable with, if someone asks us a question we don't want to answer, to say, it's actually my private business, or could you please talk to me in a different way, or asking for your needs to be met, right? Sometimes in roommate situations, there's a discomfort, and it is hard to say the hard thing, and it is hard to stand up for ourselves. But the truth is, only when we begin respecting our own boundaries can we really respect the boundaries of others. And I actually posted it in the description of this shiur, and it's this woman, and her name is Bon Quick. Thank you, Razel, for showing me this, right? And so Bon Quick comes in, and it's a parody, okay? It's not really the way I'm suggesting we behave. She works at Burger King or King Burger, and the people come in, and they're like, oh, can I have fries and a burger? Oh, but can you remove the cheese? And so Bon Quick's like, what? That is a complicated order. Get out of here, security. Right? And it's very funny, and it's a joke, and if you see it, you'll have something really funny to laugh at for Adar. But the idea is that when someone comes in and asks too much from her, she says, no way, No way. And I really believe that is what we're learning from God here, is self-value. What are your borders and boundaries? In every relationship, with people you're close to, with strangers. So here's the thing. I learned from a friend, from Manas Friedman, that when Hashem gives us all of these laws, he's saying, listen, this is who I am, and this is what my needs are. And we're actually welcome to do the same, because boundaries are actually telling a person how to love you. And most people, they want to love us the way we want to be loved, if we're asking for it, again, with kindness, in a respectful fashion. Most people want to love us the way we want to be loved. And here's my question to you. If somebody doesn't want to love you the way you want to be loved, do you want to be loved by that person in the first place? If you set boundaries and someone continues to cross those boundaries, and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything, well, then why do you want to be in that relationship with the people who are treating you in a way that is not respectful to how you want to be loved in the first place? So it's complicated, and it's deep, and it's difficult. But I really believe that is what Hashem is modeling for us. And actually, it's the basis of any relationship, is this honoring and respecting of both people's boundaries, is what we call kavod. And how I just thought it was so interesting, because, we say, oh, it's Corona, like how cool, it's like a holy, it's about giving God back his crown, or it's COVID-19, so it's like kavod, so it's like respect. But actually, what I do notice, and what I have noticed, is that we're crossing a lot of boundaries of other people in this whole scenario, or we're not learning how to respect our own boundaries. In fact, some people have shared their opinions with me in private messages, and I said, actually, I don't want to discuss this. And they said, but I'm asking you to, and I think you should, because you're a public voice, and you should tell me what you think. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I don't want to discuss this right now. No, but but this, and they'll type an answer back and say, okay, but I'm actually not talking about this anymore, or I don't want to talk about this right now. And it's amazing how people will actually treat us the way we teach them to treat us. So in other words, if I'm bantering with somebody, I'm teaching them they could banter with me. But if I'm saying ad kan, ad po, Hashem said on the mountain, until here you can go. That's called respect. The challenge is, if we don't ask for what we need, and if we don't express to people, what we're okay with and what we're not okay with, we end up living a life that doesn't comply with our values. And we end up doing things we don't want to do. And as Marshall Rosenberg teaches in Nonviolent Communication, which I'm always plugging MVC, he says that when a person does something that they don't want to do, you actually pay the price in resentment. And then what ends up happening, we think we're respecting this non-conflict way of behaving, or we think we're not being confrontational, so we're going to create peace. But really what's happening is, I'm accepting a behavior I don't like, I'm doing something I didn't want to do, someone asked me to do something and I did it anyways, I didn't set up that boundary for myself, I'm doing this favor even though I don't really want to do it, and what's brewing is resentment. And I don't know about you, but if I ask someone for a favor and they don't want to do it, if I love them, I would way rather that they didn't do me the favor and they still felt happy with me than they did the favor and they felt a little bogus against me. They felt a little bit of resentment. And this is kind of how we walk around the world, and we wonder, wow, why is so much anxiety plaguing the world right now? Or feelings of depression or anger storming in everybody. Well, I believe a lot of us are actually living lives and in relationships and interacting in ways where we're building resentment because we haven't asked for our needs. We haven't said, until here. And this, again, is what God is setting up for us. And interestingly enough, when he talks about setting up boundaries, he says, Ki chanun ani. because I'm compassionate. I thought that's pretty profound. Actually, to be compassionate on other people is to ask for a certain level of respect, because then I'm actually going to be able to continue to be in a loving relationship with you as opposed to a resentful one. So here's another very interesting fact I want to bring up about this. The American Thyroid Association, on their website, says that 12% of women in the world actually struggle with thyroid issues. And men have thyroid issues too. And I invite you, as you're watching, raise your hand. Do you have thyroid issues? So really, I mean, women who are on thyroid meds, it's like a chronic thing. You get a pill to take every single day, and they tell you basically take it the rest of your life. Just do this. And again, I challenge you, if you don't have thyroid issues, ask a few of the women of your life, do you have thyroid issues? Either hypothyroid or hyperthyroid, and you'll actually find, because in my experience personally, I know so many women who are dealing with thyroid issues. And so you're asking me, Nili, why all of a sudden are you bringing up thyroid issues? Well, so as we know, according to Kabbalah, according to the Ramchal, as we've said a number of times, I think it's even from Derech Hashem, he says the spiritual root of all illness is an imbalance in the Sefirot. And we know that the body reflects our emotional state, and that the problems that manifest in our body are there to show us how we can do a tikkun, how we could fix our spirituality, how we could fix our personality, how we could fix our character according to that body part which is calling out for attention and help. So check this out, because if we're seeing 12% of the population, that's at least 1 out of every 10 women you know, and even perhaps more, and that's not a stat even on men. So what's up with the thyroid? The metaphysics of the thyroid are not speaking up for self. Isn't it interesting that it's a throat gland? Not expressing my needs, being a doormat, being a martyr, taking guests when you don't want guests, doing that favor when you don't want to do that favor, having that conversation with the person you don't want to have that conversation for. And all of these start lowering and lowering our self-value. We can't speak up for ourselves, and then women all around the world, and men as well, are developing thyroid gland issues. And I can tell you in my own life, it's something that I've struggled with. And as I've learned to set more and more boundaries, which is essentially saying what I'm willing to say no to, I believe that I'm more valuing myself. I'm giving myself more worth. And I've actually noticed I don't need that medication as much as I did, or even perhaps at all, but I haven't got tested, so I don't know. But how interesting that women all around the world are enduring this issue when we don't speak up for ourselves, and then we have a problem with the thyroid gland. Hashem is saying we need to express. And again, how interesting is it that he said in Yitro, Hagbel et hahar v'kidashto. Put a boundary around it to what? To sanctify it. To sanctify it, to make it special. Put a boundary around the mountain to say, this is an important mountain. Put a boundary around our lives and our needs to say, I'm an important person. In fact, I value myself so much, I will not do what I don't want to do. And I don't mean like changing diapers or things that we just have to do in this world, like pay our bills. I mean in terms of the gray areas. Because if I do what I don't want to do, I pay the price in resentment. And when instead I set a boundary for myself, I've said I'm giving myself this measure of respect, I'm worth it, I am valuable, I am sanctified, I am holy, I am sacred. V'kidashto. Now, how interesting, it actually dawned on me this morning that when we're talking about being here at Har Sinai and learning all of these laws and all these boundaries that Hashem puts up, not just in our teachings, but on the actual mountain itself, Hagbel means to put a boundary, like a gvul, right? Hahar, what is a har? Har shares the same root as hirhur, or our thoughts. That we're actually allowed to put a boundary around our thoughts, what we're thinking, what we're wanting, what we're needing. What's interesting is that it's called Har Sinai. Sinai actually shares the root of the word sin'ah, which is hatred. And what at least I could say that I found in my personal life, and it's difficult, is that coming from being a person who was more willing to do whatever anyone wanted or help wherever it was needed, even if it wasn't good for me, or host more people when I didn't want to host. And again, maybe you don't have this issue and this year is not relevant to you and you're super boundary. But this is for those of us who have come from the other side. I'm just doing like a personal testimony to say it's worth it. And it's wonderful. And even though when you change and when you start to set up boundaries for yourself and ask people to treat you and to teach you, when you begin to teach people how you want to be treated, it does cause friction. There is a hatred. Saying, I want you to be what you were. I want to treat you the way you always allowed me to treat you. What, now I have to treat you different? And the answer is, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And I'm going to treat you different too. And it's difficult for people in the beginning, you know. They don't want to hear this at first. But then it creates a much stronger and much more real relationship. And I think, you know, anyone who comes into Judaism at first gets super turned off by all the laws. And as they start to like learn about it more deeply and learn that this is how you respect Hashem and this is the intimate dynamics of the romance and the intimacy, then it's like, oh, okay, tell me more. In fact, apparently there's this one guy that a friend told me about. He said he's like the biggest tzaddik in the world. And I'm like, why, you know? And he's like, well, he's not into Kabbalah. He's not into Chassidut. So I'm already like, what? Like, how can you tell me the most righteous person in the world doesn't care about the depth and the beautiful, juicy Torahs in the world? Like, what are you saying? He says, no, you know what this guy does? He says, don't give me the explanations. Don't tell me the depths. Don't try to give me this whole magical rainbow explanation. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And he said, this guy is such a tzaddik because he like just said, if this is how you respect God, that's how I want to do it. Now, I'm not saying I'm holding on that level, but I am saying that we could learn out lessons for our character from God. Because really, like, think about this. If I found out that, like I went to hang out at my friend's house the other night. Maybe I shouldn't have said that publicly. It was just a couple. I went over to my friend's house to hang out, and I really, really respect this couple, and I love them dearly. And I got there at about 6:30. We had some dinner. It was really nice. And as the time was going, we were like engaging in conversation, but it was like getting 8:30, and it was getting 9, and I started to feel like, oh no, maybe I should leave because I don't want to be too much in their house. Like they have a kid, like maybe they want to like deal with life. Now, if they wanted me to go and I stayed longer, I don't want to do that to them. I want to respect their boundaries. And so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I got to make sure to know when I should leave, even if I'm having a good time, because that's what's good for them. And because I want what's good for them, I know I really love them. Because if I don't want to respect the boundaries of the person next to me, so I don't really love them, then maybe I'm using them. And I think that you can understand in your life situations like this as well, correct? You can understand that you don't want to go over someone's boundaries. No way. We don't want to hurt other people. We want to respect and love them. So if we can assume of ourselves that we're so good and so wonderful, that we want to really love people by respecting them, then, and here's the clincher, if we're really giving people the benefit of the doubt, we have to assume that they want that too. And that even in the beginning, there might be some there might be some discomfort, like, why don't you let me go there? At the end of the day, if we could assume of ourselves that we want to respect other people's boundaries, then we need to start, well, I can't say we need to start, but I would invite us all to imagine that we give people the benefit of the doubt, that the deeper part of their soul, that they actually really would like to respect our boundaries as well. Okay. Fascinating stuff, right? I think this is like really, really so deep. Okay, so now I want to just swing back and say it's not only about the boundaries that we ask from other people to respect, it's now we also set up boundaries for ourselves. And that's like as follows, right? So when I said to you that I love this, my favorite halacha from Parshat Mishpatim is that if you encounter the donkey of your enemy, you shall return it to him repeatedly. And if you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching, then would you refrain from helping him? You shall repeatedly help with him. So it's like this. If I'm going to hold myself to the standard where I'm really saying I need to ask other people for my boundaries, I also need to kind of do a flip kick switch and learn that I have to also place boundaries on my own boundaries, right? You want holy boundaries? Don't just have gvura. Do gvura shel gvura, which in my opinion, at least in this moment, is what's coming down, is what I'm saying. So let's say I have boundaries. Someone treats me a certain way and I don't like it. So I learn to say, cool, I don't need to engage with that person. Awesome. But it's not just, we can't get caught in the power dynamic of saying, now I have self-value. I could say no to whatever I want. Now I have self-worth. I only do what I want to do. The second there comes with it too much self-obsession, ego, or arrogance, we got to keep our own boundaries in check by putting boundaries on our boundaries. And that is, so someone doesn't treat me well, I don't have to associate with them. But if that person's in need of help, then I got to put a boundary on my boundary and say, Nili, I don't even care. Do something, help, right? If there's somebody that is hurting, like somebody that I don't want to associate with, and yet you're walking through the market and you see that all their groceries spilled out, your boundary of, I don't do what I don't want to do, we have to actually not manipulate our boundaries, but put a boundary on our boundary and still help. And this is why I believe it's a beautiful checks and balances, because it's not about putting your chin up or your nose up or snubbing and saying, oh, Hashem creates boundaries, so I put boundaries too. Yes, but more like, wow, I'm learning that Hashem creates boundaries in order to have a respectful relationship so that he can be loved in the way it wants to be loved. I'm going to set those boundaries too, and then I'm also going to put boundaries on my boundaries so that it's not unbounded. It's not just like a big hand in your face, God forbid. It's yes, and now wait. Hold on one second, let's balance this out, because even though I have certain boundaries, I also need that flexibility to help somebody else that I don't like. And again, I don't know how this manifests in your life, but this halacha to me is like why Hashem is such like a, I don't want to say Mac Daddy, but like why Hashem is such a Mac Daddy, why Hashem is so awesome. Because he's still demanding of us when we put boundaries out to put boundaries on our own boundaries, and still, he's like a mic drop, right? You still help the person. If their groceries spilled, it's basically like still be a ben adam. Like when you're setting boundaries, it doesn't mean you can't be a ben adam. When you're setting boundaries, you still have to be a mensch. You still have to be a human. And so there's that delicate balance that we really discuss that really is like, it's really what Hashem is asking us to do, is to do it really, really well. Perhaps not like Bon Kwikwi, who's throwing every customer out of the restaurant, but to first begin with questioning, am I setting up those boundaries? And then when I am I being a mensch, right? Morleh Golem always says, and I think I mentioned it last week, like you might be right, but does Mashiach want to hang out with you? So you can ask for your needs and wants, but we have to make sure to check ourselves and say, but am I still being a ben adam? Am I still being a mensch? Excuse me. Okay. And by the way, this connects to the fact that tomorrow night is Rosh Chodesh Adar. It's a 2-night Rosh Chodesh, right? Yay, Misha, 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 Adar. Marbim besimcha. So it's not just, oh my God, Adar is coming. No boundaries. I'll do whatever I want. Like, yeah, like Adar is about this unbridled joy, and this like Purim, the crux of Adar is like my boundaries are gone. I'm drunk. I've literally brought down my boundaries, but there's still always a but on it. You're never allowed to break halacha on Purim. There's still a boundary, and in fact, I think the reason that we have Mishpatim right before Rosh Chodesh Adar is to say we are about to bust out into breaking free from boundaries, right? Because a lot of us also need that idea, that breaking free of the boundaries we've put on ourselves as opposed to others, right? There's another angle to this that we didn't exactly get a chance to look at tonight. But first, we set up those boundaries in Mishpatim so that we give ourselves a context and a playing field, and then within that, we break free. So it's the same thing as a sports game, right? Like, if you just like, it's just the Super Bowl, so it's like, should they just say, okay, this Super Bowl's really weird anyways, like, let's break all the rules, like, I don't know, like poke the guy in the eyes when you're carrying the football. It's like, no, there are rules, and within those rules, we play the game. So that's sort of how Adar begins to cross into this topic. So I was, so I was reading in the Shlomo Katz book that I mention every week. And in Mishpatim, on page 332, it says, what does it mean when I lift up the Torah after reading it, right? Did you guys ever think about this thing that we read the Torah? Like, why don't we just roll it up, put the little dress back on, and stick it into the closet? First things first, what we do is we read the Torah, and then we lift it up. We raise it up, right? Josh Groban, you raise me up, right? We take the Torah and we lift it up. And so what Rav Shlomo Karlibach says, and Rav Shlomo Katz transliterates, is that the Torah was given to us, but we can make the Torah even deeper and even higher. So yeah, we have the Mishpatim, we have the laws, we're supposed to be learning all of them and practicing this boundaried life of respecting Hashem and the relationship He wants in the world. But then what we do is we take these laws and we take what we learn in the Torah and then we raise it up. We elevate it, we learn from it. We don't just raise the Torah up. We take the Torah, it's like the story of our lives, and we raise our life up according to that which we learned out from the laws. It's not just learn the laws, okay, this is Parshat Mishpatim, like, yeah, Nili said there's like a lot of different mitzvahs, mazel tov. No, there's a lot of different mitzvahs, there's a lot of different laws, and now how do you take that idea of all these laws, and instead of saying like, oh, there's so many laws of Judaism, it's frustrating, and there are, right? But we say, oh wow, now how do I take this idea in and of itself that there are so many laws and raise that up and raise myself up to a place where the fact that there's so many laws becomes a kiddush, a sanctification of myself, of the Torah. Wow. And again, that's why it's amazing. I said we talk about it later. That God says, Anshe Kodesh Tihiyun. What does Kodesh mean? Does anyone know? It means holiness, but actually, Lekadesh, it's a separation. It's a division. It's saying if you really want to sanctify something, you gotta separate it and make it special. So too, if I want to walk out into the world with this attitude of like, a humble attitude of I'm really important, I'm really sacred, I'm really godly, because we all are. My needs are God speaking to me about how I need to behave in this world and what I need to respectfully ask. And if I want to do that, I have to teach other people how to treat me by saying, here is the border, here is the boundary, here's the separation. And when we have these borders and boundaries, at that point, then I say, and here's how I'm sanctified, right? Some people, they don't want to be called a certain name. They say, oh, please don't call, I don't like when you call me that name, right? Like people have names from their childhood, they switch it when they're older. And if we're just like not respecting them, we'll call them whatever we want. But if they say, please don't call me this, and then I respect that, then they have become more important in my eyes. They have become sanctified. They have become Kodesh because they've laid out for me what is okay and what is not okay. And at the end, God says what? He says, guard everything I told you. So it's like really a threefold manifestation of guarding and protecting to create honor, right? You guard a treasure. Hashem is guarding Har Sinai. Hashem is guarding the laws. Hashem is guarding His needs by putting up the boundaries, sharing with us that we too can guard ourselves because we're so precious. We're so precious. And when we really, really, really learn to ask for the respect that we want, then we can really, really, really hear other people with the respect that they need. And then what all of these laws has done is not created a society of like rah, 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 but a society where we really hear each other. Like, oh, that's how you want to be loved? I want to respect you. And then we start doing that. And then what a beautiful world we have. So God is not just giving us the laws, then He's saying extra, and guard everything I told you. Because it's precious. Because it's this unbelievable radiant light, Torah aura. And that's why I think at the end of the Parsha it comes to say that they saw, that I was telling you why I put these colors behind me, this like kind of sapphire blue, that they saw the ottoman of the throne of God, and it was like blue sapphire in like heavenly radiance, right? It was clear what Hashem wants from us. Sapir comes from the lashon of clear, clarity. It was clear what Hashem wants. And when people are clear with us about what they want and what they don't want, we can give them so much more respect and honor and have such a more real relationship. So my blessing for us, is to really start to differentiate, to take a look at Mishpatim as, oh wow, Hashem said what he likes and what he doesn't like. And I bless us to start gaining that clarity and that strength, because like I said in the beginning, when I'm walking down the street and someone's like, are you married? I'm like, before I wouldn't, I was like, ha 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 ha. Now I'm clear, like, please don't talk to me that way. If you'd like to ask me a question, say, hi, my name is Joe. Is it okay if I ask you a personal question? So I'm learning. I bless you to be learning also. I bless us to take these laws and the lessons from these laws, and like we do at the end of every Torah service, we raise the Torah up. And we take this Torah and we raise it up, and that we start honoring ourselves and respecting ourselves in these ways, because every time, like we said in the beginning of the Shiur, I take that little turn, I've guided myself now onto a path of that much more value and worth. And when I start, if I'm here and I accept what everyone does to me, like we said, and I'm just letting go, who knows, I'm paving a path of like a doormat. But if I take these little turns and these little awarenesses of, wait, did I like how that person spoke to me? Did I want to do that thing? Am I doing this out of love and respect, or am I like crossing my own boundaries? Am I crossing other people's boundaries? Then, like, if I start to navigate myself in these little tiny changes and have this awareness, then I'm really paving the path to go on such a different mode, where at the end of the day, I know that I am respecting myself. I am a treasure. I am Kodesh, and then I want to give that to other people, especially because I have so much less resentment, let's say, as a result of that work, that I'm so much happier in general, and then I can even get out of my own and be able to see how others want to be loved and respected in the first place. So, may we be successful. May learning to live our lives in a way that works for us, that respects our needs, desires, and boundaries, allow for the boundaries to be set so that within those boundaries we could be wild and crazy and free and full of joy. And may we only hear good news from all our friends and family. And Rosh Chodesh Sameach. Thank you, Hashem, for being with us. Thank you guys for coming to study Mishpatim. And may we all know this time of like the most awesome self-value and self-worth and self-confidence, and then giving that value and worth and confidence to the people around us by setting our loving, kind, boundaried examples.